Hello, this video is intended to help our customers understand the three components of grease. We'll also scratch the surface of the subject matter in terms of choices and complexities surrounding grease formulation. The main component of a grease is oil. In the context of making a grease, sometimes referred to as base oil. All grease starts life as an oil, and the base oil is the largest component by weight of a grease. Depending on the formulation, base oil typically represents around 75 to 95% of the grease. The base oil within a grease is most often performing the lubrication task, but this rule is application dependent and there are a number of exceptions, for example, a very slow moving component. Through our colleagues at Nye Lubricants, we offer a variety of base oils from which to begin the formulation. Choice of base oil very much depends on the intended task for a grease. The choice is more complex than is shown, as there are subcategories or variants of the oils. An example would be perfluoropolyether or PFPs. There are linear and branch PFPs, and silicones is another example. Also, it is possible to blend some of the base oils together. The viscosity of the base oil that is chosen can be a crucial factor. High or low viscosity, the choice is application dependent, and if you want a high viscosity grease, you may presume that the selection of a high viscosity base oil is necessary. Not always the case. The tackiness or stiffness of a finished grease is influenced by the amount and type of base oil that's used, but also equally by the thickener that is added to the base oil. This leads me nicely on to discuss grease thickener systems. Thickeners are sometimes referred to as gellants, and when added to an oil, the thickener acts like a sponge, giving the grease a stay-in-place characteristic that is expected from a finished grease. The thickener doesn't just bind the oil together to create a grease, the chosen thickener is also selected with the application in mind. The thickener system should complement the base oil selection and improve the finished grease performance. As you can see here, there are a number of benefits associated with each type of thickener, and this is just an overview of the usual suspects that our colleagues at Nye use during formulation. As with most things engineering, there are trade-offs. When selecting the thickener, there isn't one thickener that will tick all the boxes. Remember earlier I mentioned how the finished stiffness or viscosity of grease is influenced not just by the base oil viscosity, but also the thickener. Whilst acknowledging the logic of picking a high viscosity base oil to make a thick, stiff or high viscosity grease, depending on the amount and type of thickener included in the formula, it's also possible to create a very stiff or tacky grease from a low viscosity oil by increasing the amount of thickener used or changing the type of thickener used to compensate. This is somewhat of a simplification of the subject really, but some thickener types are more efficient than others. Silica, for example, is a very efficient thickener. PTFE is inefficient as a thickener. To add more complexity, it is possible to use more than one thickener in a grease formula. The percentage of thickener used in a grease formula by weights can vary from 3 to 40%. So now you can see that formulating a synthetic grease can be compared to extreme cooking, in that a variety of ingredients to choose from, a bewildering number of permutations in terms of ingredients, amounts or percentages. The last component of grease is additives. In some ways, these are extra bells and whistles to a grease formulation, giving a performance twist or an extra characteristic to a grease. As with base oil and thickeners, there are some typical additives that we employ, plus subcategories thereof. An example would be antioxidants. We have a liquid antioxidant and we also have a solid version. Both have their own advantages or disadvantages. How or when we use many of these additives and what their real chemical names are is considered part of our secret sauce, or rather the complete formula details are considered proprietary. And that concludes the video. Hopefully this will help our customers understand how a grease is put together, and the intention being to understand the basics and also make sense of our product proposals.